In the world of business building, we often wonder if it could get any more complicated. GRC, GDPR, ESG, zero carbon, green hydrogen, cybersecurity, and big data. Let's not forget the long funding processes that can make you crazy. If you are a world changing founder and innovator, how do you connect with the support that you need to move ahead? Well, this podcast puts the people, planet, profit through partnerships theory to action by helping you to see opportunities in every episode to create a meaningful partnership. The innovators, experts, and diplomats we interview are all looking for partners, and that could be you. No time like the present to find out. So welcome to Frontrunners Innovate with your host, global business developer, Mary Kurek. Hello, everyone. Now, this is a first for Frontrunners Innovate. I have with me a guest that is sitting actually right with me, the person that we're interviewing. We're actually doing this together at Duke Marine Lab on the campus here, this big, beautiful campus that I've never been to. That's 15 minutes from where I live in Atlantic Beach. But this is in Beaufort, North Carolina. And our guest was actually one of the speakers at a symposium here. So I took advantage of the situation. So you'll get to meet her in a minute. But we're going to be talking about microplastics and plastics in general. Wonderful conversation to have because I've learned a lot just in the 30, 40 minutes that I've been here, just to know what's going on with the fish that we eat right outside the door that's in the ocean right around North Carolina. But we're going to learn more about plastics in general and how we can kind of conserve what maybe is going on out there and what kind of programs, progress, where we've come from, where we're going with all of this, with two experts that we have today. And the first one we're going to get to know is my co-host, and this is Dianna Cohen. And Dianna is a co-founder, and I guess you're the head gal now, runs the plastics, what is it now? The
Plastic Pollution
Coalition.
Plastic Pollution
Coalition. And you're established there in Los Angeles, right? Out in California.
I'm based in Los Angeles, but our team spans the continent of North. So we're all the way across the country to DC.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Very good. Thank you. And our special guest today is Imari Walker-Franklin. And you are a brand new PhD. So out of Duke, right?
Yes. I just finished in 2021.
All right, perfect. And research chemist and really big proponent of us looking into microplastics as something that we need to be concerned about. And we're going to learn more about what you're doing, the research, and a book that is out, right?
So, yes, so I can't wait.
All right, we'll talk to you more about that, but we're going to learn about Dianna first. So Dianna, why don't you share a little bit about your background, what brought you into this work, and what brought you into, I see the beautiful artwork behind you, and I assume that's yours. No. She's an artist as well, everyone, visual artist. So this isn't all that she does with her artistry, but she's going to tell us how she married this work with the current work.
Sure. So, and just, sorry, I should have said something before we started. It's Dianna. My name's Dianna.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. And the art piece behind me is not my work. It's a photograph of Walden Pond, which I just love and think is beautiful and is part of our home. So
it's gorgeous.
Yeah. So, Henry Thoreau wrote a lot about Walden Pond and, was a naturalist, and I feel like it's appropriate and I feel good having it back me up. So my story is I am a visual artist. I studied paint. Well, I started out as a biology major at UCLA a long time ago and tried to dual major in science and art and found that was not possible for me to do. And it's a longer story, but it became a little bit disillusioned with science, which is so fun because I depend on science every day now for the work that I do. Yeah. But I think what happened is I wanted to be creative immediately. And I felt that I would need a PhD in order to be creative with the sciences at that time. And so after a couple of years, I transferred to the art department where I found a bunch of people all reading James Black's book, Chaos Theory. And I thought, oh my gosh, my people, I found them. People visualizing mathematical sequences and turning them into visuals and fractals. And so my preference would have been to be able to study both simultaneously, but they were located and still are located at polar opposite ends of the campus. So that is how I came to art. With my artwork, I studied painting and film, and then began going from painting to working with collage. And then in my collage work, working with brown paper bags, and that led to adding some pieces of plastic bags that had one in particular that had a botanical image of a dandelion printed on the side of the bag and the name written in Latin. And I found this so deeply ironic. And by then I was also sewing my pieces as well. So using the thread as a drawing element. Anyway, so I started making these plastic-based pieces and had this kind of eureka moment, like, oh my God, plastic, this is such a strange, loaded material. What is it made out of? What are the properties of it? Oh, it seems like it's ubiquitous. I can find it everywhere. It comes in every color. It's got interesting text printed on it and images. I can cut these up. I can put them back together in different ways and create messages and things that I feel like saying. So that's how I began making the work. Now it's 32 years later, but basically I've been making work out of plastic bags for that long. But after about the first 8 years of working with the material, some of the bags and some of my pieces began to fissure or break apart or kind of shatter or fracture. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. The plastic is organic, it's ephemeral, it's natural, it's like us, it's breaking down and going back to the earth. And so I looked into that and began to, and this is kind of all pre-internet, everybody. So, it wasn't as easy to look things up. You had to actually do research and talk to real people. So I started looking into that and found that it wasn't actually breaking down, it was breaking apart. And that was concerning to me. And around the same time, I gradually began to hear about something called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And so I started approaching that and thinking, this is something that needs to be dealt with. I want to go out there. I want to clean this up. I want to take artists and scientists out with me with a cargo ship and 2 decommissioned fishing trawlers and start. I thought that it was an island. I thought I could travel to it. I thought I could clean it all up because it was just floating on the surface of the water, like all the naive things that one would think when you first hear about a problem like this. And so that's when I began developing a plan to clean it up, started putting together a scientific advisory board of people who had actually been looking at the problem, including folks from, scientists from Nat Geo and explorers and Dr. Sylvia Earle. And in learning more about it, what I realized is it was not something that I could go clean up. And so then I went back to that took up about a year of my life. Then I went back to the drawing board and I thought, you know what, this is a bigger problem than cleanup. I need to gain a deeper understanding of what's going on here. And so that's when I began to really educate myself and learn that plastic is made from petroleum and fossil fuels and fracked and cracked gas, which I had no idea. And that we are making all these single-use things that are designed to be thrown away. And I also began to realize that plastic was never designed to be recycled. And plastic is still not designed to be recycled. And I think these are really important things to be aware of. The average person doesn't know this, and they don't know that. I just read an article yesterday about plastic cutting boards. I've been begging friends not to use those because they get those little cut marks in them, and we're basically adding microplastic to our food. So anyway, clearly I'm very passionate about this. In 2009, I co-founded Plastic Pollution Coalition. Our goal was to bring together different organizations and businesses who were all looking at the issue of plastic pollution and the challenge, and begin to develop a common language that we could use when we talk about it, and begin to focus on solutions and go upstream and look at all the different source points where we could affect change. So in 2009, we were co-founded. We've evolved. We're about to enter our 15th year of existing. Plastic Pollution Coalition is a nonprofit communications and advocacy organization that collaborates with an expansive alliance of organizations, businesses, and individuals to create a more just, equitable, regenerative world free of plastic pollution and its toxic impacts. And we work by educating, connecting, and advocating for the world that we want to see, which is a world free of plastic pollution. That includes working with a wonderful group of scientific advisors, including Dr. Walker-Franklin and I could talk a lot more about projects and things we're doing, but I think we should just get started and get on to talking with Imari because she's the expert. So.
All right. Sounds good. You make me think about a conversation I had with somebody on bioplastics not long ago and what they were doing with, making, I love it. It's from, the guy was from Iowa and they were making potato bags from potatoes. So made perfect sense to me. They had plenty of them there. So anyway, we're on to Imari. So Imari, you're a young gal. You've just got your PhD. You've already written a book. It's already published. So tell us where this came from. Where's your why?
Okay, so I'd say the journey probably started in my undergraduate institution. So I went to school at the University of California, Berkeley, and I studied marine science. And one of those requirements also required us to do a research project of some kind. So I ended up studying abroad in Moorea, which is a very small island in French Polynesia, in the Pacific Islands. And we got really great opportunity to get exposed to what it was like to live in the environment, be around people in the community. And when I was thinking about my research project, one of the first things that I thought of was the fact that the community was surrounded by trash, like whether that was trash coming in from neighboring waterways or just the buildup of trash because they don't have great water or waste management infrastructure. And so they would instead just burn their trash in their front yards, and it often had plastic waste associated with it. So my biggest concern initially was, well, could I look at lichen populations that they basically live on trees, and they're great indicators of air quality. And so I really wanted to be able to go and look at lichen populations near where they were burning their trash to kind of help people get an idea of, this might not be so good for you. I did not know at the time that I was thinking with an environmental science perspective as an oceanographer, but my project did eventually evolve to be something else because they were worried about the dangers of being in people's yards and, the EJ implications too of just, assuming you can be in someone's, land and asked to do projects like that. But, I think it was a great starter for me to realize that my path was changing. And I still cared about the ocean and the environment, but I wanted to do it from a different perspective. So I then moved to Duke to start an environmental engineering degree. And I was still trying to decide what I wanted, but it wasn't until I went and joined a class on environmental fate that they talked about the great garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. And, talked about, the impact of all of the single-use plastics on wildlife and the imagery. And it was, a big light bulb in my head of like marrying the two of like my passion for the ocean and this new idea of environmental exposure and chemistry and engineering. So that is when I decided to really dig deeper into the idea of plastic pollution and then go into, learning about the fact that plastics, they're so diverse in their material and their polymer types, but they're also diverse in the kinds of chemicals that are placed inside of these plastics. So you might be, encountering a water bottle from one company versus another, and they can use entirely different chemicals to still, make the bottle a certain shape or a certain color or prevent it from breaking down as fast. And so there's over 10,000 different kinds of chemicals that can be placed into plastics. And I found that so fascinating because initially in the class, when I began to get interested, I was thinking about other chemicals that we have been around, have been around for decades that could be basically attaching to the plastic and being transported around the world as like a vector of transport for either those chemicals that could then be re-released into a stomach of a bird or a fish. But the fact that plastics already have chemicals that we should be concerned about that could be harmful, that haven't been properly tested for toxicity, really lit a fire in me. So that became my why for so long. And so I think that's kind of what started the research into plastics. Now, to go down to the trajectory of where the book come from, I think that has to start with my journey into science communication. So I would say that is the year of 2020 when the pandemic started and we got shut in for, sometimes for weeks to months. Some people made sourdough bread. I decided to learn how to use YouTube and make a YouTube channel. I realized that the research that I was doing concerning plastics was only reaching other people who already knew about the problem. I was only talking to other scientists, and we were in our own echo chamber. And I thought that the kind of research that I was doing and the kind of knowledge that I had gained from doing all the background work was so important for other people to understand, so important for even my family to understand and learn from. And so I thought that YouTube is just a really great platform that so many different audiences from different age groups can get exposure to and find relatable. And I thought that, you know, especially with coming with a degree and finishing my PhD, that I could add a little bit more credibility for the information and share real research articles, share links to the papers so that people could take the knowledge and then go further with it if they wanted to. And so that's kind of where it was born. And then I continued that work with advocacy on social media, and then to, you know, doing panels with Plastic Pollution Coalition and a lot of other fun things. And then eventually that led to an opportunity to co-write a book with Dr. Jenna Jambak, who's a professor at the University of Georgia, who's been doing so much great work on plastic pollution for years, and has just, you know, been in this field. So it's been an honor to write the book with her.
That's fantastic. And when did it come out?
The book came out in August, this August of 2023.
So it is brand new. Okay. We'll ask more about that.
Just came out.
Yeah.
Fresh.
So as we said, you actually were a speaker at the conference or the symposium that we're at right now at Duke Marine Lab, and it's called the North Carolina Marine Debris Symposium. And I'm not sure if this is the first of this type of symposium. You'll have to tell us whether or not this is the first one. But what I'm seeing when I look around the room is a lot of young faces, students, what it looks like, a lot of research students. But what we're talking about today in this symposium is microplastics. And that's something that we've shared a little bit of information off and on in, you know, in our podcast here at Frontrunners. But just so, because we're very global and we have a large following out of Africa, and we have a lot of people who are interested in climate and circular economy and that sorts of things. But I don't know how many really understand what microplastics actually are and how they relate to human beings. So take it away.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That's the whole ocean. All right.
Yeah.
So microplastics are really, it just means small pieces of plastic. And there are two different kinds of microplastics. Some of them are actually intentionally made plastics to be very small. Best example is glitter. Any glitter you come in contact with is most likely made of a plastic. And even the ones that say that they're biodegradable, that still means that they're still plastic. They just degrade in certain conditions that may not be true wherever it ends up. But, you know, even shimmers sometimes for eyeshadows can be made of microplastics. If we think about facial wash, I mean, I think it's changed quite a bit in the last few years, especially since 2015. But they used to incorporate primary microplastics, the microbeads, into their face wash products. I know there's been a lot of bans to stop that. The toothpaste. Toothpaste as well. And then the larger class of microplastics, they're called secondary because it's just, you know, anything that was big that became small from degradation. So exposing your chair, you know, you have a plastic chair out in the summer all day. It starts to, you know, become brittle, it starts to yellow, it starts to crack. You're in that process, it's degrading. And if you throw that chair then into the ocean against a wave, it's going to start to break apart too. And so all of those processes are releasing the smaller pieces of plastic, and they can be from, you know, scientists say anything smaller than 5 millimeters, which is basically the diameter of a pencil eraser tip, or, you know, like a pearl or something like that. That'd be the best way to say anything smaller than that is defined a microplastic. And we're so, you know, we're very concerned as scientists and, you know, community members about this because it's very difficult to recover those small pieces of plastics once they've been released into the environment. They can travel just about anywhere, especially like I didn't point out also that the majority of the clothes that we wear, the majority of our carpets, the majority of our furniture is made of plastic. You don't think about it when you're sitting in something soft and cushy, you know, but that is a polymer, it's a plastic, and those release fibers. And those are actually the majority of things that you would find in the environment are these microfibers. There are microplastics as well. And they take very long time to fully, they're not really degrading. So I think like she said, it's more so that they break up. Yeah. Yes.
Can I add something to what you're saying, Imari? I think it's important, and I've learned this again from a number of our scientific advisors, to understand that in a sense, all plastic is pollution. It's kind of pollution by design, because all of it breaks down in one way or another eventually. And and people will say to me, oh, I don't drink water from plastic bottles when they've been out in the sun, or I've left it in the car. But how do you know where that pallet of plastic bottle water or other beverages, juice, milk, whatever, how do you know where that was before it arrived at the market? Could it have been sitting in a warehouse for a long time? Was it on a hot train in a car? Was it in a shipping container coming from Fiji? Like, where
convenience mart?
Where was it? And people just we're totally disconnected, because we pull it from a fridge and we think, oh, it's chilled and this is fine. But I think in the same way that tires are breaking down every day and creating a dust, as Imari said, it's coming out of our clothing. We're finding microplastics in beer, in honey, in rice, and in our bodies. So we're finding microplastics in human blood. We're finding it in hearts, both pre-surgery and post-surgery. We're finding it in our lung tissue. It's been found in placenta, both on the mother's side and the baby's side. And we can also, plastic particles have different pathways to us. We can absorb it through our skin, and the chemicals from plastic through our skin, through ingestion, and through inhalation. And there was a study that just came out recently that not only are we, so 2 years ago, it was established that not only are we potentially ingesting, so eating a credit card's worth of plastic a week, but a new study came out that it seems that we're also inhaling an additional credit card's worth of plastic a week. And this is all, we're not conscious of it, but when the sunlight's coming through and you see like little things in it. Hello, what is our dust made out of? What is the catch-all in a dryer? What happens when we wash our clothing and they're synthetics? So I wanted to add that to what Imari is saying, and I'm sure I'll have more to add too. But back to you, Imari.
Right. Now, I think those are such great visuals too. I think one thing people don't think about is the moment that you open a plastic water bottle, the process of clicking that open releases microplastics into the water. The process of opening a chip bag is also shown to release microplastics into the food, especially different kinds of premium special tea bags. They're usually made of sachets that are plastic, and those have been shown to release, millions, or, I guess the number is wildly out of proportion, out of the number of microplastics directly into your tea because it's such hot water. So it's, it is a huge issue as far as how much we're exposed to as humans and where we're now finding it. And so I think researchers are most concerned with the fact that if these microplastics are in our body, if they're able to move to different parts of our body, and they've shown that it's the potential for it to cross the blood-brain barrier and accumulate in these different places. What does that mean for us? Is it going to stick around, or even if it doesn't stay for a long time, what is it doing in that process? Like, is it releasing chemicals? Is it carrying viruses, or pathogens? There's a study that was done on fish that they exposed microplastics and a harmful virus at the same time to the fish, and it caused a worse outcome for them. They were more likely to die because of the exposure to microplastics. So if we have to think about the fact that we're not only surrounded by, one issue, we've got a pandemic, we've got, all kinds of chaos associated with each other. So they all interact with each other. And so it's so important to consider.
Imari, can you talk a little bit about the chemicals that plastic's made out of? Because I think that's part of why it's so concerning.
Yeah. So there are, a variety of classes of chemicals. The first is that the actual chemical that makes the plastic can even be harmful. Those are called monomers. So when you put a bunch of monomers together, they make what they call a polymer chain. Some of those monomers include bisphenol A. That's what makes things like epoxy that lines the cans of like, your soda, or it can even line line floors, so it seals floors. And so bisphenol A is known to be an endocrine disruptor, which means it can mimic hormones in the body and can cause reproductive damage and reproductive development disorders. And so that's one compound that if you see BPA free, that also is a little bit misleading in some ways, because sometimes when they substitute BPA, they can substitute it with a different chemical like BPF or BPG, which means you can tell from the name it's very similar. And some of those have been even shown to be even worse than the original chemical that they were replacing. So that's called a regrettable substitution. But it really highlights the fact that it is so difficult to, create something new that has the same functionality without causing more harm. And why we need more green chemistry in the first place, and streamlining what kinds of chemicals that go in our products. Yes.
No, I was going, yeah, totally.
At the energy.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. And then the other class of chemicals is the largest. It's polymer additives, or and processing aids. So these are the things that are used when you're trying to mold the product or mold the polymer into a certain shape or flexibility. So there's plasticizers, and like the largest well-known are called phthalates. Those are also, endocrine disrupting chemicals. They have the potential to cause cancer. If you live in, California, there's this proposition, Prop 65, that states that if you walk into certain places like a hotel room, I remember seeing this when I went to a conference, it had a warning label for anybody that, this area has things that contain phthalates, contain chemicals that can cause cancer, that could be harmful to pregnant women or pregnant people. It was just like basically a big warning label. It's not like the hotel was any different than any other hotel, but they just had to give the disclaimer now that, on certain products that phthalates are present, there are other chemicals that could be harmful. And so it's just a big eye opener for people so that they can physically associate something with being potentially harmful or toxic to their body. And then other kinds of chemicals include even the things that make the colors on the plastics. So we're starting to realize that some of the dyes that are used to dye clothing can even be harmful, because they can also be released into the environment or onto our skin and cause allergy reactions, skin sensitization reactions. I think there was a study done on airline workers. I can't remember which airline. They had brand new uniforms, and it caused like huge skin reactions because of the colorants that were applied to their plastic clothing. But yeah, it's a very large class of chemicals. We worry about them causing cancer. We worry about them being just persistent in the body. We worry about them accumulating into our body, even being mutagenic, so they can change or alter our DNA, to being endocrine disruptors, or just generally toxic to ourselves or to the environment.
Can I share just a small anecdote? Part of why we're so passionate about the work we do at Plastic Pollution Coalition is very personal. And it's that when I was a teenager, our mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and we were told that it was estrogen receptive, which doesn't mean anything to you when you're 13 years old. And she passed away when I was 17. That also didn't mean anything to me at that time. But now in the work that we've been doing, and the more I learn about the impact of plastics and exposure to plastics and the chemicals from plastic, but both for people in utero, but also just over the course of our lifetime, I understand that the chemicals that you were just talking about, BPA and BPA substitutes and phthalates, are endocrine disruptors. And that is exactly what they do. They affect our endocrine system. And, just to simplify it for folks who might be listening, that means that they turn things on and off in our body when we don't want them to. So these chemicals have been linked to obesity and diabetes, which we're having epidemics of in the United States and exporting to the other parts of the world. It's been linked to breast cancer, to brain cancer, to prostate cancer, and it's been linked to fertility issues, infertility, lower sexual function, sterility. So, it's just, it's real. And there's a whole group of pediatricians who have signed a letter talking about how plastics are not good for children. You know, and yet when you go out to eat somewhere with kids, little kids, they automatically think, oh, these kids can't handle a real glass, and they handle a plastic cup with a plastic lid.
Plastic forks.
Plastic everything. We are plastic people. We are Barbie. So,
yeah.
Well, I think even from the idea of sperm counts, like, yeah, with that fertility, like I think we're seeing like a exponential decline in sperm count over the past couple of decades. And you got to wonder where it's from. It's from whatever we're exposed to. Chemicals are just about everywhere, and they've got a lot of issues. And I think the one thing that I did not include in this is that there's another class of compounds that researchers are just starting to discover called unintentionally added substances. And so these are things that the manufacturer has no clue most of the time are placed inside of plastics. And so sometimes that's just an impurity. So it could be from the feedstock of whatever they use to make the plastics, or it could be a breakdown product of something else that's happening in reaction. And we have no clue what those things could be doing to the body or to the environment. And all of these chemicals can interact with each other. They could, egg each other on, they could cancel each other out. But we really just have no clue, because chemical mixtures are a very difficult thing to understand. We test toxicity by chemical perspective, but we don't know how to do toxicity tests of actual extracts and mixtures of plastic leachates and extracts.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, Imari, is also it's that much more concerning when people talk about using percentages of recycled plastics. I've been told that the black plastics that are used became popular like in the last 10 years for to-go food and started replacing cardboard boxes and things like that. Although, to be fair, those cardboard boxes also have a plastic lining in them, but the black plastics that they may be made with some recycled electronic plastic content. And that to me is deeply concerning. All of it's deeply concerning. Yeah, I remember having a conversation with Tom Vilsack about not the Secretary of Agriculture about why it's not a good idea to microwave food in plastic or plastic Tupperware. And he introduced me to his wife. He introduced me to his wife and said, honey, we can't microwave the leftover spaghetti in plastic. It's not good for us. And she was like, okay, sounds good.
Well, it's hands-on learning right there.
It's hands-on learning.
Yeah.
But I was going to add one other thing too. You guys are talking about how you're at a marine debris symposium. Part of why we created Plastic Pollution Coalition and decided to call it such a long name, Plastic Pollution Coalition, is because at the time, everything was called marine debris when it had to do with plastic in the ocean.
Yeah.
But the definition for marine debris doesn't include the word plastic, because I think when that term was coined, plastic probably wasn't as big of an issue as it is now. And so, yeah, that was our first messaging goal, was that the groups that joined our coalition, we asked them to call it plastic and to call it plastic pollution when that's what we're talking about.
That's pretty awesome. And it's straight to the point. I would say that especially the Marine Debris Symposium here has been around, I think, maybe it's 11 or 17 years now. So the full circle moment for me was that I went to this meeting in 2017. I gave a talk. I think I gave one of the only talks on microplastics, because before they were talking about derelict vessels and other things that were of a priority for the marine environment. But now that I come a couple years later, it's almost all about microplastics being found in different parts of our world or locally, and the implications that it has. And so it was really great to be able to give that keynote speech to talk about why we're here today.
That's good. I hate to miss that. I mean, I learned a lot just kind of standing in the back there. So let's talk about where you're headed next. What you got to troop around and sell the book. Okay, so, and you're going to tell us where we can find that in a minute, but what are you after next? What's going on?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2021. I finished my degree in environmental engineering. My research was focused on chemicals and plastics and how they were released into aquatic environments and how they can change into different forms and could be potentially more harmful. Now I've moved to RTI International.
Yep.
It's a nonprofit geared towards improving the human condition. So I'm staying pretty close to Duke, but my work still encompasses microplastics. And I've started taking on work focused on microplastics and human health. So we've started a few studies on tire particles, especially because we think about from the perspective of tires is that not only are we exposed to them from like roadside dust, or if you carry your shoes into the house, you're bringing in outdoor dust into your environment, but also if you're playing on a field with recycled tire content. If you see like a soccer field or, children playing on those, they've got those little pieces of black tire particles that get stuck everywhere and you take them home. But you're exposed to them, whether you're running on this field, you're breathing heavy. And so I really wanted to see what are the impacts to people playing on those fields? What are the impacts to workers that are breaking those tire particles down into what they need to be?
Yeah.
So we started some lung exposure models to see those toxic effects, and we are seeing some things that are pretty exciting and from a scientific perspective, but really saddening and disappointing from like a human health perspective.
I think there's a lot yet to learn. You guys talking about this makes me think, especially, Dianna, when you were talking about the different ways it might impact in the lungs and the different things. I'm given to every now and again having migraine headaches. And I was stunned to know how many people out there are also having them. I kind of thought that was more of a not so common thing. It is extremely common. I don't know if it's just more common among women. I get the impression it is than men, and maybe post-menopausal women. But wow. And I keep thinking, my doctor says, oh, it's just a stress headache and, shoulder pain and whatnot. And I'm thinking, nah, it's more than that. I can tell. And I wonder how many other people wonder about the same thing. And it makes me think, I wonder if maybe some of this that you're talking about could be causal, Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, the one other thing I would say, and I've really only come to, so I've been doing this work for 15 years with Plastic Pollution Coalition. But something I've only really come to more deeply understand in the last 6 or 7 years is that because plastics are made out of petrochemicals, they are polluting us and disproportionately polluting low income and rural communities, brown and Black communities, indigenous communities across the United States, 2 miles from where I live in Los Angeles, the whole Baldwin Hills corridor in LA, Wilmington, Long Beach. We are polluting everybody and ourselves, and disproportionately polluting people who live across the fence. In Wilmington, I went to a community and walked down a beautiful street with white picket fences and dogs and kids playing in the front yard across the fence from Conoco, and then had the smell come across the fence while we were listening to an expert from Stand LA tell us what the community was contending with in terms of asthma, headaches, nosebleeds, higher levels of cancer, fertility issues. I mean, and it just makes my heart break when I even talk about it. I've also experienced that with fence line and frontline organizations that we work with in Houston and all on the Gulf Coast, in Louisiana, in central Pennsylvania. It just breaks my heart that we're poisoning ourselves. We're poisoning everybody because what? We need another single-use plastic fork or piece of crap. I mean, it makes me really, really angry. And so I think we all need to make this connection. How hard is it to bring a reusable cup or a bottle, or even I bring bamboo utensils with me everywhere I go. If you love straws, I love straws. I carry stainless steel straws. There are glass straws. There are bamboo straws. There are a million things you can do. And there are a million things that my grandparents' generation did. And they would be laughing at us if they were alive right now and saw everybody eating and drinking everything out of single-use plastic. It's literally...
Yep, you froze up.
It should be some definition of... Oh, am I back?
You're
sorry.
back.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying it should be there's some kind of definition of insanity, what we're doing with plastic and all of this and petrochemicals. Yeah. And then additionally, if, for example, Duke University or universities are making a pledge to divest from fossil fuels, then they need to take a look at phasing out single-use plastics on campus and in the work that they do. It's just so clear, and that would be better for everyone's health and better for the environment there, and not create any waste or garbage or litter. And then we wouldn't have to talk about recycling, which is really a kind of misnomer for downcycling. And what really happens with that is that we incinerate a lot of it. When we incinerate it, we release dioxins and create particulate pollution, and we poison ourselves again. So it's like, it's kind of the perfect material. How many times can we poison ourselves with one material?
Yeah.
And this is a lot. So not to be like a bummer about it, but Imari, your book is called Plastics.
Yes. Tell us, and where can we get it?
So plastics is, a really great, comprehensive summary of the fact, how long we've been making plastics, what's the history of it, how much are we producing around the world, where does it end up in various places, because every country is different, every community is different, and, how is this such a huge problem for waste management, and the fact that it ends up in our environment. So we talk about the first discovery of plastic in the environment, and the implications to wildlife, and then the implications to society and human health and environmental justice, which I'm so glad you brought up. And then we kind of veer towards the end towards policies that are currently in place or that are on their way, like the global treaty that's coming up with United Nations. And then we try to leave some hope for the future for, some of the alternatives that are coming out and some of the interventions that are starting to come into place. So it's available on basically anywhere you want to look, on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. There's, I think, a Kindle edition as well if you want to just read it online. But if you look up Plastics and Imari, Imari, it should come up pretty quickly, and you can find a link to a local independent bookstore as well.
I'm excited to get a copy and read it. So
She'll have to do a signing for us. Yeah, right. We'll get
Oh yeah, that would be great. I would love that.
So Imari, I always ask the last question. Who do you need to meet to help you move forward in the work that you're doing? What type of people?
Okay, so I think it's really hard to choose one. So I just wrote this book on plastics. My dream is also I'd say that this audience for plastics is more so high school and up. For the knowledge level, because it's science, has a little bit of science elements that be a little difficult to digest for younger kids, but I would love to meet someone to write a children's book. I think that this is information that they can be empowered by, and continue that route of science communication to a new audience. And then I think the second one, man, I'd love to just continue talking to science, to people who are in the rooms that can make a difference. So whatever makes the most sense.
Okay, that's good. Well, you have a fan right here.
Yeah, well, I would say it's also going to be important to have you talk with policymakers, and we're preparing right now. I'm really excited because we're preparing to launch our global plastic laws database on the 16th of October. Oh, sorry, I don't know when this is coming at, when you're going to share this, but anyway, 16th of October. And it's going to be a free online resource to help organize and assess a broad range of policies that have been implemented and maybe adapted for national and international policies, including the United Nations Plastic Treaty. And it's going to be launched by Plastic Pollution Coalition in partnership with Break Free from Plastic Europe, Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide, and Surfrider USA on Monday, October 16th.
All right.
That's amazing.
Imari, get in front of more.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, did I freeze again? Sorry about that.
Just temporarily, but we got it all. And what we'll do is, ladies, we will drop links to all of what you just said. Once you have the link to that, Dianna, if you'll send that to me, we'll make sure we drop it. If you have the Amazon link, I think you may have sent me that already, but if you haven't, make sure I have it. If you have the book cover already, if I don't have that, I'd love that. So excellent. We'll get busy getting you connected.
Thank you.
Okay. This is terrific. So I'll say, everybody, if you're watching this, YouTube or anywhere else listening to it, wherever you get your podcast, go to www.frontrunnersinnovate.com. You'll get this. You'll get LinkedIn profiles on these ladies' bios. You'll get all the links that we just talked about so that you can go straight to where you need to go to buy and access the information that you need to. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Thank you, Mary. Good to see you, Imari. Good luck with the book. I actually,
Yeah.
I would love information about the book for us too to share. So if you can,
Yes, I'll send
as
it to
you prepare that, send it to me. Please.
Okay.
Great.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.